The Entrepreneur's Library, episode 243.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Welcome back to the EL. Today we have Ben Decker, co-author of Communicate to Influence, How to Inspire Your Audience to Action. This was a wonderful interview. I actually enjoyed talking with Ben. Him and his wife actually co-authored the book, but there's tons of information that I gathered out of it and that I can't wait to relay to different individuals within our team, our organization. Welcome, Ben, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
Thank you, Wade.
Before we take a deep dive into your book, Communicate to Influence, will you take just a moment to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you personally.
Sure. Ben Decker, CEO of Decker Communications. We are a firm that trains and coaches various executives, sales, engineering, mainly corporate America, but working to transform the way people communicate in business. And so we have an office in San Francisco and New York, and we travel the country and the world leading various programs or one-on-one coaching, all of the above, or speeches. So we have... My wife and I lead the company. We co-wrote this book that you're describing, and I am right now in San Francisco, in lovely San Francisco, sunny San Francisco now.
Ben, perfect. Thank you for sharing that first off. And let's jump right into that book that you just mentioned, that you co-authored with your wife. Communicate to Influence, How to Inspire Your Audience to Action. It came out actually here recently, right? April of 2015?
It did, yes.
Perfect. And Ben, we're going to move quickly. But our whole goal here today is to really cover those top questions that the listener, the future reader, would like to get answered before, investing the time and money into reading your book. The first one is, what was the inspiration behind writing Communicate to Influence?
Well, we've relaunched Decker Communications about 10 years ago, and we've been around about 35 years, and we bought it back and relaunched it. So we've been doing this coaching training for quite a long time, and it's very experiential. I think the challenge with so many entrepreneurs and really people in business is whether you don't have the time or you can't afford the coaching. And so we wanted to figure out a way to put this experiential insight that we get to see from so many Fortune 500 and even smaller companies and entrepreneurial companies. How do we share this insight? Because we get to work with these great leaders that are really working on their communications. And so many people think, oh, it's just natural. They just do this. It's not the case. People work on this, and it's one of those areas that is like golf. We can always get better, and that's how you have to look at communication. So we approach the book of, number one, waking people up to realize, hey, we got a problem, especially in this attention economy with smartphones, with computers open as we communicate to people. And we wanted to wake them up to realize, what can we do about it? And luckily, a lot of our clients allowed us to share their stories. So we hope it's a fun read to show what others have done and what we can do as entrepreneurs to get better.
Ben, you've already alluded to this a little bit with what you just said, but really, I love to ask this question because there are thousands, millions of books that are going to come out in the next month and year alone. And so every book is almost that needle in the haystack, and we're trying to help people find that needle, that next book that's going to create that next nugget. So what makes your book different from others regarding the same or similar topic?
Well, I think it is, you're asking me to pat myself on the back here. Why are you so great? What's your book so good? I think that it is very practical. And a quick example, Wade, is I was on another interview this morning, and I asked the radio show host, I said, hey, did you get a chance to read it? And he said, I spent all weekend reading it. It was great. And what he said was he found himself putting Post-its and ear tagging the entire book. And that is really what the purpose of the book is. It's almost a manual. It's almost an approach to continue to think about I need to look at this and remind myself of what to do here. It is not just a theoretical, it is a super practical, with hopefully an interesting read of real life stories of various CEOs or leaders of companies that learned something and changed something and were better. And when you finish reading it, hopefully you feel inspired to know exactly what you can change and how you can change it. So There's some thought leadership. There are some approaches to communication of when you read it, you should be able to nod your head and say, yep, I'm guilty of that. I know exactly what to do to change that. Good, thank you. That is the approach of the book.
That's excellent. That's a sign of, I'm glad that you mentioned that story about your interview earlier this morning, because that is the number one sign for me personally if a book is good. If I can go pick that book back up and look, and there's a couple of highlights, or there's, some of them have a ton of highlights and some writing, and then that one that's really powerful has highlights all over it. I've written personal notes. It's got the Post-it notes, what you're talking about, because there's just that many takeaways from that book. That's the kind of book that I love to dive into. And Ben, this next question is really more about the format that you created for the book. Is this a book that the way you designed it to be read, can they jump in and jump out, cherry picking information as needed, or did you really design it to be read from front to back?
Once you read it and know it, yes. However, we debated of the first few chapters. If you stop at chapter 1 or chapter 2, you're going to walk away fairly depressed. Mainly because chapter 1, we titled it Business Communication Sucks. We wanted to wake people up. And so we share 5 white lies we tell ourselves, or our organizations or our teams tell ourselves, which perpetuates part of the problem. For example, I'll just share some of these. So it'll give you a sense of if you can jump in, jump out. Because you wouldn't want to stop at chapter 1, chapter 2. We need to set the stage to make you want to read chapter 3 through the rest of the book. So, for example, the white lies, just to get people to nod and say, yep, I'm guilty, or we are guilty. For example, we say, one white lie we tell ourselves is, if I say the words, people will get it. So many of us, even as entrepreneurs or whatever role we have, we think as long as I say the right words, and we don't think of the experience. So we want people thinking of, what is this experience as I'm on a podcast with Wade Danielson? How's my voice? How does it come across? How's my content? Versus, if I say the words correctly, people will get it. It's not how it works. Secondly is when I'm on, I'm great. And people turn an on and off switch, and it's not authentic, and people can see through that. So we got to change that and be on all the time. And that's a big learning for so many entrepreneurs and even so many CEOs we work with. That's an aha for them. They realize, oh my gosh, I am always on. When I go and get a cup of coffee, people are looking at me. So we want to be as consistent as possible. Third is I don't need to prep. I can just wing it. And I think no matter what role, we're all guilty of this. We go from back to back to back and we don't prep. And we have to shift that. We have to think about our audiences and figure out where we want to go. Fourth is people tell me I'm pretty good at communicating. And this is really aimed at so many leaders. They get what we call a shine job. And hey, boss, you're good. And you pat them on the back and you clap for them and you just give them accolades. But leaders are not getting balanced feedback. This is an area they can improve. You got to seek areas to improve. And then the last one is maybe not so much aimed at the entrepreneur, but it's more aimed at a culture. And that is, it's just not the way we do things here. So that's aimed more at the mid-level manager that is afraid to take some of these risks because they're not used to saying, someone speak with a different voice or smile as I talk into this podcast, because that's just not the way we do things here. I'm on calls all the time that we talk flat and this is the way it is. And I'm here to give an update. So as we at Decker, we work with so many leaders and managers and people in engineering or sales to change some of their behaviors, it feels super risky, Wade. And so we want people to realize it turns into this self-propelling engine. So that's so much of the setup of the beginning of the book. And then the rest of the book is why now? And then really chapters 3 and on is how do we go about it? And so we introduce methodologies around behavior, methodologies around content, and really the how-to. And that's the practicality piece. But once you read it, you can go back to it and remind yourself, I need to do this, I need to do that. But the first time you may want to skim through and just realize the approach.
Excellent. And Ben, you just went through a ton of great information. And I think that you've almost given us the deep dive with what you just did. But there's something that I think everyone always wants to know going into a book. And that's if, the reader can only take away one concept, principle, or action item out of your entire book and the things that you just discussed with us. What would you personally want that to be?
I think the title of the book, the theme of the book, and that's just influence. Find ways to influence, and even take it a step above, and you can get into inspiring. As leadership continues to change, we introduce a roadmap of, and I'll have to describe it, it's challenging just with audio. But if you imagine a 2x2 grid with the vertical axis being emotional connection, the higher up, the more trust, loyal, likable. The lower, the less. And then imagine a horizontal axis with content. On the left side, you talk about your information, your widget. On the right side, you talk about them, what it means to them. It's very much listener-focused content. Now, you just got to imagine with me this 2x2 grid. So on the bottom left, there's this inform. You don't necessarily connect, and you talk about your stuff. Going clockwise, at the top is entertain. People like you. You're very liked, but you talk about your stuff. There's no value. There's no influence. So that's entertain. And then keep following it around to the top right, which is inspire. That's the goal. That's where we all want to be. You want to be connected. People want to feel connected to you, trust you, feel loyal to you, like you. At the same time, you're talking about things that apply to your audience. So that's that inspire quadrant. And then we'll just end the quadrant with the bottom right being direct. That's where people don't necessarily connect with you that well, but everything you talk about is about them, to them. So you almost want to think military in that bottom direct quadrant. Most of us fall in the bottom left, and that's just inform. We tend to inform. Meetings, calls, pitches to VCs. We share about our content, our product, our company. And again, let me tell you about me and what I'm so passionate about. And we don't shift it. And that does not leave an opportunity to influence or even nonetheless inspire. So if there's one takeaway from reading this book is to shift the mindset, is to any opportunity you go into, are you talking about just you? Or are you really thinking about going into a podcast with Wade Danielson and understanding where he's from, what he's doing, what he's trying to create with the Entrepreneur's Library? That's my approach right now. The entire time I'm talking to you on this, Wade, is I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about your listeners. We have to do that as entrepreneurs in every opportunity. Who am I talking to? What do I want to get across? What does it mean to them? And am I aware of some of the behaviors as I'm coming across? So there's a two-pronged approach to influence and inspire: behavior and content. And we really separate them in all of our coaching, all of our training, and we use video feedback to make sure people know what's going on so they realize, wow, that experience that I just created was not very good. Here's how I can make it better. Good. I'm excited to incorporate it.
But this is, I'm glad you said that. And this makes me want to grab a ton of copies for, we have an IT security company, but more than anything, it's a sales company. And wow, do our business development and account managers need that message. So many times, one of the biggest trainings that I do is, I know you love talking about you. So does everyone else. Not as in that person. They love talking about themselves. Talk more about that individual, and that got spun. But because sometimes these guys or girls are meant to go in there and create relationships with people, and we have Voice of our Peace. So we're able to record these calls, and sometimes that might be a 25-minute call in which our rep spoke 23 minutes of the 25. And that reminds me of what you were saying, that the military, if anyone talked to me for 25 minutes straight, or 23 of 25 minutes, I would feel like I got dominated in that conversation, that I was not heard, and I would know a lot about them and they would know nothing about me. I would feel like there was no connection whatsoever. So I think this is unbelievable, and I can't wait to hand this out because even the name, Communicate to Influence, in sales, we're looking to, our salespeople are looking to influence, and the communication part of it, something that's dropping the ball. So I appreciate the message that this book portrays. And this next question is a little bit different because I'm asking you for a favorite quote, something that you or your wife wrote that has, and I know it's only been out for a short time, but maybe it's already resonated with the audience, or maybe when you guys were originally writing it, you felt like it would resonate. So something that you guys wrote, a quote, and we take a minute to explain what it means to you.
One quote. There is a quote. So we started each chapter with quotes, and I appreciate hitting me from left field to keep me on my toes, because I'm challenging myself. Geez, do I remember even one quote from this book? I was on a plane recently and I said, I got to, in the last couple of weeks, I got to reread it. I got to make sure it's fresh in my mind because, with a book, you write, most of 2014 was this book. And then it comes out in the last couple of months. And so you got to remind yourself what you wrote. But we were working on an e-learning effort and I had to quote this quote. So I remember it. And it's a Sidney Harris quote that I really like. And it goes into what one thing you want them to take away if you read the book. And I'll paraphrase it, but basically it goes like this. The words information and communication get used interchangeably, but they mean something quite different. Information is getting out. Communication is getting through. And to me, that quote resonates because I think a lot of business is informing, is sharing information. And we see it every day, Wade. We see it every time people want to share about a product, their company, whatever it is, or even a new initiative that they're pushing to their body. It's informing and it's not influencing. So if we really want to communicate, we got to get through. But to get through, people got to like you. People have to want to listen to you. And I even think I'll mention one other quote that I like that we put in the book. It's from Amy Cuddy, Harvard business professor. And what she said was, in communication, you need warmth and competence, no matter what. We all agree on that. But what we forget is you need warmth before competence, meaning you need to connect. People have to be willing to listen to you. So what I love about that is it raises the awareness of, geez, what am I doing? Am I looking at people? Am I even smiling? Do I look that serious? Most people have no idea, including probably your sales folks, Wade. We share one story in the book around a CEO I got to work with. And it's about a $30 million company, and it was a growing company and never seen himself on video. And I put him on video, and then I showed it to him. And he had me pause it. And he goes, now, wait a second. What we just recorded, what you saw 10 minutes ago when you're behind the camera, is that the same thing that I'm looking at on video? And I was confused by the question. And I said, if you're asking me if it's the same thing from my perspective, yes. For you, it sounds different. Things sound different coming through your ear, but it is the exact same experience from what I saw initially to what I'm watching on the video. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. And his response, and I won't swear on your podcast here, but he said, that's F. He used a swear word that starts with an F word. He goes, that's F. And it made me laugh because it was such an eye-opening experience. But that's not uncommon to so many people throughout the corporate world.
So is there a lot in this book that's going to kind of create that paradigm shift where people can be more self-aware about what you just talked about, that it was so shocking to this individual?
Well, no, not in the book. But there are things in the book that will help you know how to do it. For example, feedback. There's 3 ways to get feedback: personal, audio feedback, or video feedback. So you run a podcast. My hope and assumption is that you listen to it to know, how was I and how can I get better? Yep. So many of your listeners have no idea what they're doing with their voice. So get an audio recorder, use a smartphone, record your 30-minute conference call. Don't listen to the whole thing, but listen to 10 seconds to realize, would I want to be on the other end of this? That is a huge eye-opener. Yeah,
I need to do that in a sales meeting. We have Monday morning sales meetings, and I would love to hear how I sound in those. I listen to the podcast frequently, and I've had other people ask them to listen to the show and give feedback. But I know that I'm a fairly intense person when it comes to that Monday morning meeting, and I bet I have no idea just how intense I'm coming off. So, and that's the thing too, is so many times I'm very excited. I'm excited, but it comes off as almost military direct mode when really I think I'm in there inspiring and, I'm not. So I know that there's already going to be some shock value there, but that's fantastic.
And that made me think about, with your listeners and you running this show for entrepreneurs, it is one of the greatest gifts to be passionate, but it can also be one of the biggest curses. Mainly a couple reasons. One is passion's contagious. People follow passion, and it's fantastic. But it can lead to some negatives, and 1 or 2 of them could be around curse of knowledge. You talk in words that make sense to you because you're so in your own world. We got to be aware of that. It could also lead into me, and we just talk about our stuff and our thing, and we don't turn it into a listener-based message. So the more we think about our audience, for example, your team, the more we care about them, the better we'll be. So when I hire people, I usually just say the one thing I ask as CEO of this company is that you just care. You care about our clients. You care about what they're dealing with. You really think about them, because then you will be better. You will connect better with them. You will have more of a passion for them, and you'll be able to influence them more. But we a lot of times forget who we're talking to because we're so passionate about what we want to say.
That's fantastic, Ben. And this wouldn't be, obviously, we're a book-centric podcast, and so we actually have to ask for a recommendation. And I always preface this because we're not asking for any. We are asking for the book recommendation. So if there was only one book you could recommend based on the way that it's changed your life, maybe created a paradigm shift or a lifestyle shift for you, what book would you suggest?
Well, the bestseller throughout the world is the Bible. So I'll push that aside and start with that, but I'll keep it business related. And I would say one that's sitting on my desk right now, and they've been partners with us for the last 5 or so years, but a book by Chip and Dan Heath titled Made to Stick. And since it's come out, I've handed it to almost every executive I've worked with because they are in the same mission that we are, and that's to transform communications and be better at it. And they have a fantastic approach to push people to think outside the box in their communications. And it actually parallels really well with our approach at Decker. And so we ended up partnering, creating a whole messaging program. But it's a fantastic book. And I even take peeks at it to remind myself of their principles around success with 1S, being unexpected, making sure you're emotional, being concrete, being credible. And I use so many of the principles in my everyday coaching with various executives.
That's what an excellent recommendation. And that book has actually been suggested, I think, once or twice. I would imagine it would have been more, but out of 240 plus interviews, I think it's been mentioned only a handful of times. But fantastic book. And Ben, my last question before you depart, can you recommend the best way for our listener to not only get more information on you, but also get more information on your book?
Sure. Well, our company is Decker.com. So everything is there as far as what we do, how we go about it, whether it be speeches, keynotes, workshops, group programs. That's kind of our bread and butter, a 1 or 2 day program where you put 6 to 12 people in the program and you get on video, private coaching, and then all the way up to one-on-one coaching. That's a good portion of our business. And then ongoing coaching and consulting. So Decker.com, but the book is CommunicateToInfluence.com. And I think you can get there through our website. I should know. Our marketing person would slap my hand by not knowing. But there's more details on the book at CommunicateToInfluence.com. But everything, for the most part, is there. Various videos of both Kelly and I describing the book, describing our methodology, describing our approach. So you can find out more there.
That's excellent, Ben. Thank you so much for coming on. And many times we refer to this as a baby because we know how much time, we haven't personally written, but we've heard how much personal time this takes to put together and then promote a book. So thank you for coming on and sharing your book with us today.
Thank you, Wade, for having me.
Thanks again for listening in today. If you'd like more information on Ben or his book, Communicate to Influence, check out the show notes at the elpodcast.com.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to the elpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's the elpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.